Hi, I'm Frances Katzen, and welcome to my podcast, The World of Real Estate. In this series, we will explore the world's largest asset class and how it plays out on a global scale. I am so incredibly excited to have you joining me today, sir. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Miller, the one and only, the CEO and president of Miller Samuels. He's also the professor of market analysis at Columbia University, and he's also part of the Mayor's Economic Advisory Panel. He has been the CEO and president of Miller Samuels for the past 33 years, but you don't look like a day over 21.
Well, I started when I was 5.
I am so happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm so pleased to be here. This is great.
It was a bit of a feat getting here today, wasn't it?
It was a journey.
Life is a journey, Jonathan.
I'm going to write. Hold on. I need to write that down.
So who is Jonathan Miller? Dun, 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 dun. And how did you end up with your own company here in New York?
So at heart, I'm a dull and boring numbers guy who watches C-SPAN for entertainment, but I'm brimming with sarcasm. My wife is my business partner, co-founded the company with my parents and my sister. They have since retired or gone on to out of New York, essentially. I married. My wife is my business partner, and we have 4 kids. So.
Wow. Was it hard doing a family business? It can sometimes get a little tricky, especially with a wife.
Yes, absolutely. It's challenging, but we were just separated enough in our duties to not kill each other. And I'd have to say, as a general observation, we really didn't have too many issues. And I think it's just because we all were entrepreneurial-like and driven to, move forward. So if we did have fights, in theory, they were resolved pretty quickly.
I'm impressed. Have you always been in New York City? If not, how long have you been here and what brought you here?
So I'm sort of confused whether I can really declare myself a New Yorker. I've been here since 1985. I'm kind of a mutt. I was born in Boston, had a Boston accent till I was 7, moved to the Washington, D.C. area, initially Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. My dad was a developer and in a little sleepy resort town, and then we ended up sort of Rehoboth Beach is the Hamptons of Washington, D.C. I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, went off to school in the Midwest to be in the hotel business, ended up getting my first job for a company that was acquired by Marriott in Chicago, inner city, where I ran a department in a small rehab hospital in the south side of Chicago. The way I ended up in New York was, because I'm not a native New Yorker, is simply my wife, we met in school, Michigan State. I was in the hotel.
Yeah!
And her brother married a woman from Long Island, that went to school in Michigan. We stayed in Manhattan, went to a wedding in Long Island, and we said, okay, we're moving here. Both of us went home, and within a month or so, we quit our jobs, sold our cars, and moved. My parents were living at the time. My dad was involved in some entrepreneurial thing. That's a whole nother story. And slept on their 1-bedroom apartment floor for about 6 months until we, got jobs.
Those are good parents.
Yeah,
right
they're great. I mean, I talk to them. They're retired. They live in Florida, but I talk to them multiple times a week. We're very close. And just sort of started Miller Samuel in 1986, and it kind of worked.
Was there a lot of competition for that at the time? Were there other appraisal firms?
Yes. Yeah. Really, when we started the company, there was no licensing. So it was sort of the Wild West.
Got it.
What
does a real estate appraiser do, and what is their importance to a deal? Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, so there's a lot of misconceptions. I'm sort of actually, as a sidebar, I'm involved with the regulatory authorities in Washington. Been pretty active since the financial crisis in terms of the appraiser's role. So within the real estate community, we're seen as an impedance, as
Debbie Downer.
Yes.
Let's just cut to the chase.
Right.
You basically muck it up for us.
Exactly. And sometimes it's correct, and sometimes the person that's doing the mucking up has no business being in the valuation profession.
I know. We've had that wonderful experience.
And actually, since the financial crisis, and this could be a 5-hour podcast, which we don't want to bore your listeners, is that you literally have a significant decline in competence in the industry since the financial crisis, and it's all because of regulatory changes. But
interesting.
And part of the reason is, and I don't want to go too much into it, but just sort of the idea is that since the financial crisis, there's now an institutional middleman called an appraisal management company. And so let's say your borrower, or the buyer for your apartment you're in contract for, goes to a bank, and then the bank has a contract with this giant institutional middleman. And let's just say the appraisal fee, is $500. Well, the appraiser doesn't get $500 since the financial crisis. They get $200.
Uh-huh.
And
so it's hard to find someone that's.
And so and then. There's sort of this whole thing where, well, now there's a shortage of appraisers. Well, there's a shortage of appraisers willing to work for 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. And we've never really had anybody to sort of speak for us. That's why I've been much more involved in the last few years. Our trade groups are sort of complacent. Not all, but some are. And we don't really have a voice because we're like, a very small, and no one makes a ton of money. And, relative to, like NAR, real estate, the National Association of Realtors, even though the individual agents don't, the organization's gigantic. We just don't have the mass for lobbying for changes. So we're always the afterthought.
That's horrible.
And so you asked like what our role is. So our role has nothing to do in most people's interaction with an appraiser is for mortgage purposes, right? Even though that's a small part of our business, and I'll get into what else appraisers do. But the bank is hiring us, the appraiser, to value the collateral that they're lending to your buyer. Mm-hmm. It's not for your buyer, even though your buyer is paying the appraisal fee. It's who engages, like our client is who engages us, not who pays our fee.
Understood.
It's a broadly misunderstood concept.
That is a big distinction, isn't it?
It's big because we don't care, in theory, we don't care what your issues are with. We're supposed to provide a neutral benchmark. During the housing bubble a decade or more ago, our role was pivoted because most of the 2/3 of mortgage lending went through mortgage brokers. And mortgage brokers only got paid if the loan closed. So guess what kind of appraisers they picked? The ones that always made the deal happen and were morally flexible. Almost all those people are gone.
Are gone, of course.
They lost their license or they're just obliterated. And we decided, right around the housing bubble, I remember the moment I realized that my career was going to be over unless I started speaking out was about 2005, when you could see that we were deal enablers as a profession. We weren't independent arbiters of value. We were literally the deal enabler. And
that's a very good way of saying it.
And that's really what we were. Mm-hmm. And so we're not supposed to be anybody's friend.
We're supposed to be an impartial person assessing value.
That's correct. Now, there's a whole other discussion of whether this person is competent or not, but that's our role in the process. And that role was lost. We became, I thought of us, I was going to rebrand my company as like the Donna Karan acronym DKNY, like Deal Killer New York, like, because that's how we were being portrayed. And it was so unfair. So I remember in 2005, I started thinking, well, let me do a podcast, let me do a blog, let me just do something. And I ended up doing a blog. And within short order, I started getting calls from like CNBC did an interview, just out of the blue from this podcast or this blog that I wrote. And I remember they said in 2005 they interviewed me, and it was like real estate's dirty little secret, right? And it was about, and I was saying 75% of the appraisals being done aren't worth the paper they're written on, and because back then we used paper, and I remember all my peers, especially all the ones that are gone now, were saying Miller, sour grapes, you don't get it, you're just jealous, and I just remember thinking, I can't sell my soul. Because you do it once, that's it.
Yeah, I know.
And then in 2008, 3 years later, CNBC replayed the interview and they said, here's somebody that told us 3 years ago this was going to happen.
That's fantastic.
And all of a sudden, I'm a genius.
That must have felt great.
It was great. It was vindication, but it was 3 years of hell going through it because, I have a family, 4 kids, a mortgage, and I'm doing the right thing.
And you're getting killed for it.
And getting killed for it because I didn't play the game. And so I prefer everything I do, I look at it from the longer perspective.
That took a lot of courage.
It was either courage or I'm just an idiot, because it was amazing how people around me in my world all changed because they became desperate. They have a mortgage, they have kids, and they weren't allowed to be neutral. And it was a structural flaw. It was
I remember that. I remember I would have someone coming in and they'd say, just be there with him.
Yes.
I was like, what is it that you want me to affect exactly?
Right.
Hand him an extra bit of comps to help him reassess. But conversely, it can also go the other way around, right?
Yes.
We've had issues with really, well-priced, in good order, and then have someone come in and not know what they're assessing and then get the call going, I've called you.
Yeah.
I've said, listen, we have
How do we solve this?
How do we solve this?
Right. And what is my usual response is you're screwed.
Yes.
Because, I'm very helpful. I'm very helpful that way. That's why
you're honest. That's why I love you.
But the problem with the scenario is that everybody the appraisers out there, basically the regulatory oversight that's provided to these institutional middlemen's appraisal management, which account for about 90%, 80 to 90% of mortgages that have an appraisal go through an AMC, appraisal management company.
Wow.
And the requirement really, they say otherwise, really is, do you have a state license? So I'm licensed in New York State, but I've never appraised in Albany before.
Right.
Doesn't make me qualified.
Exactly.
Right? Or I've appraised in Westchester my whole life, and this is a Bronx property or Manhattan property.
So what do you do?
So the first thing you do is that when a broker gets a call from an appraiser and it's like an out-of-area number, you need to go back through the mortgage channel that your borrower did, or if it's on, or you're on the other side, go to the other and just make noise that we want somebody that's locally based. The whole thing is, do you have local market knowledge or not? And in theory, if you have somebody that doesn't have local market knowledge, why on earth would you want them involved in your transaction, right? Mm-hmm. I have sort of a peer network around the country. I'm asked all the time, like, do you know somebody in LA? Do you know somebody? And I do. Like, I know I know people, whatever. And it's so.
My best friend's sister's mother's cousin can help you.
Twice removed.
That's right.
Yes, exactly. No, but it's like, I've gone to conferences with them. I've spoken,
You feel that they have a good sense of what they're doing.
Or, you call them and ask them questions. Like, I was president of this small appraisal organization. We always meet in Dallas every year. And I have this network of 80 really, sort of like the equivalent of Miller Samuel in their local markets, in my opinion. So I can call them and ask them, how would you resolve this problem, this valuation problem, instead of just winging it?
Got it. It's an ongoing one, that one.
It is.
What are the most important considerations in the valuation of real property?
So I used to say that, I'd love quoting the trite, location.
Oh, God.
Right. And now that word is uncertainty, which is a whole nother topic. But in terms of the way I think the way I think of the valuation, a valuation sort of solving a valuation appraisers, we call it problems. Like, it's a valuation problem. The assignment is show us that this value is reasonable, right? And so sometimes there's like things like tools out there like the Zestimate. I know I'm getting off topic a little bit.
But what's a Zestimate?
Well, I'm sure you've never heard of it before.
Nope. Is it a dirty word?
It is. Let's just say it's a 4-letter word, except for it depends how you spell it. A couple extra letters. But the thing about the Zestimate is that, and I remember back before co-ops or public record, 2006, my company, we had amassed more co-op data than anybody that was in the market. That I'm pretty comfortable saying that. And they approached us
That's hard to do.
They approached us to partner with them. Like, one of the founders came, and I never trusted that, what the analytics were. And they needed us because many of the big banks, the CEOs were, in Manhattan or whatever,
so it was sure their values were held.
Right, exactly. and
I'll help you if you help me.
Right, I'll scratch your back.
Yep.
And so, but what I found was that they're not a lot of the sort of the craft or skill of projecting your competence is part of its presentation. So, for example, when you run an address on a Zestimate anywhere in the country, let's just say the result was 567,432. All right? To me, that conveys a level of precision or accuracy that does not exist. Right? It should be 500,000 or whatever.
Round it up. Yep.
It should be, or a range.
Yeah.
475 to 525, whatever. But it should not be. And I told one of the founders this explicitly, and they say, well, that we like that because they want it sticky. They want to infer that it's accurate, but still be able to say, sort of defend it. That, it's not intended to replace appraisers, right?
But yet it basically is trying to.
Yeah, because they've mastered the marketing. It's a marketing effort to, they've bought the consumer. Essentially, they, like, you can just look it up and it's right. I mean, I hear people on the commuter train saying, yeah, my house went up 0.5% last week. And you're like, no, it didn't. It didn't. Which I find amazing. But there's such a sort of a trust that's conveyed that I know it's made real estate agents' life a living hell because it infers it conveys an accuracy and just one sort of random sort of thought about that.
Keep going.
A friend of mine who's an appraiser in Sacramento, Ryan Lundquist, who's a fantastic appraiser out there. And he found that the Zestimate changes in value when you put it on the market. And we can see that with some of these houses like Chip and Joanna Gaines. They get a lot of attention that, let's just say, I'm making the numbers up, but let's just say, this address is worth $250,000 in this neighborhood, and it's been flat as a pancake for 3 years. Like, you can see the line, and then they put it on the market for $950 because it's Chip and Joanna, and suddenly the Zestimate goes to $947, and
not taking into consideration the blends of what's really not been happening around it.
Right,
so it's an off.
It's just a random, and so what I think they've changed, and I could be wrong, but I think they've changed the algorithms to give an outsized weight to the asking price, which is insane because we know after coming out of this recent boom is that sellers, especially at the high end, were infected with a case of sort of aspirational pricing, which
being in love with their own real estate to the point of no return.
I think that's
$6 million, but I want 12, but it's really worth 6.
Yes, and not only, and I want it quickly, like now. I want it now.
Yesterday.
And I have sort of a statement for that, which is
drum roll. Brrr, bing.
The market doesn't care what you think.
The market is speaking.
Yes. The market does not care what you think, and no matter, so whatever.
Well put. How is being a real estate appraiser in New York City different than from other cities?
Well, I think if I was live somewhere else, I probably wouldn't be an appraiser. Because what makes it so cool here is that it's hard. And because it's hard.
Everyone, did you hear that?
It's hard, and that's what sort of makes it.
You like the difficulty and the complexity of it.
Yeah, I mean.
That it moves so much, this market?
Well, because it changes block to block. Like it's intellectually stimulating. Like I, as opposed to appraising tract housing in Phoenix, nothing about that. But that's just not my thing. And those people are more vulnerable to automation. Automated
Very
valuation, sort of what the Zestimate represents.
Keep that Zestimeter away.
Totally.
God damn it.
Totally.
Burn it.
And it's, that's at the mercy of public record. And what's fascinating with all the market research that I do for Douglas Elliman, for the Elliman Report series I've been doing for 25 years, is that sort of as a general rule, New York City has the worst public data in the country by a multitude of about 20.
Oh, my God.
And then if you go east to west, and this is very general, is that public record and multiple list, the quality of data that's being conveyed to the public improves. So if you're looking at California versus New York, there's no comparison. I cover LA.
Serious?
It's dramatically different. My theory is, that they're newer, they're more technology advanced. The Northeast is more staid or... So
banks will typically only lend 80% of the value, right, for a home.
Yeah.
If the home appraises for less, what a buyer pays for it, what options does he or she have to stay in the deal?
Well, first of all, right now, let's see, my son bought I have 4 boys. One of my sons bought a house a year and a half ago.
By the way, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
4. Holy moly.
And they're all handsome and smart.
Boy, did you hear that, viewers?
So, and 3 are married and 1 has a significant
One
other.
left. Oh, bummer.
So, but anyway, 1 put 10% down. And then I have a son right now buying a house and, the accepted offer, probably 5% down.
Wow.
So that stuff still exists. The whole world is not 20% down. I'm not saying that's good, but we're seeing a little bit of drifting into sort of the bubble aspect. I'm not saying we're in a housing bubble either, because credit is still not at all. I don't think we are, because we don't have credit.
The credit issue is not so much the issue; it's the value issue, right?
Well, sort of. So what I mean by that is during the housing bubble, you just had to have a pulse or maybe fog a mirror to get a mortgage. And even then, sometimes you didn't need to have either one of those. Today, credit conditions have not normalized to historic sort of...
The usual high of 14% or 8%?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're still at 3s and 4s.
It's still tight.
Yeah.
Right? It's tighter than historically normal.
I love that word, historical normal. We've been using that for the past decade,
I know. Well, but in many ways, it's sort of misplaced because I don't know what normal is.
There you go.
Normal is not normal.
Normal is my normal.
My normal, right?
Honestly, talking with you is always such a pleasure.
Oh,
you
likewise.
are just a wealth of knowledge, completely straight about it, and have spoken to both the Federal Reserve and Elliman for years. And it has been such a treat to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Fran. You make it easy.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the world of real estate. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with my latest episodes.